I'd just finished installing it. The Blue Bomber, I mentally christened it, though Sarah, my ever-practical wife, just called it the Mailbox. It was a sturdy, well-made unit, classic shape, but painted a rather lovely shade of deep forest blue. A tasteful rebellion against the endless sea of sandy beige and faded greige that dominated our streetscape. I'd even attached a custom-made house number plaque I'd designed, featuring a stylized oak leaf. Subtle. Classy. Or so I thought. "Looks good, right?" I said to myself, stepping back to admire my handiwork. A beacon of individuality, a testament to tasteful nonconformity. Humph! The sound, like air escaping a leaky bagpipe of disapproval, came from across the street. Marjorie Perkins. She was pretending to inspect her unnaturally perfect, chemically dependent lawn, but her eyes, sharp and critical, were locked onto my mailbox like heat-seeking missiles of judgment. Marjorie lived for the HOA bylaws. She probably slept with a laminated copy under her pillow. Anything deviating from the approved palette of suburban sadness was, in her eyes, anarchy. I gave her my brightest, most insincere wave. "Afternoon, Marjorie. Like the new box." She just sniffed, turned abruptly, and marched back inside her aggressively beige house. Oh boy, I knew that look. That wasn't just disapproval, that was mobilization. Sure enough, 2 days later, the dreaded envelope appeared, nestled amongst the junk mail like a viper in a pile of coupons. Thick paper stock, the Oakwood Meadows HOA logo, a weeping willow being strangled by an oak tree, I swear. Sarah saw me holding it when she came in. "Oh no," she sighed, putting down her grocery bags. "What now? Are the garden gnomes staging an unauthorized parade again?" "Worse," I groaned, tearing it open. "It's addressed to occupant. They've already dehumanized me. Feels mailbox-related." I scanned the contents, my blood pressure doing a familiar tango with my temper. Blah, blah, blah. Attention Architectural Control Committee. Blah, blah. Non-conforming mail receptacle. Bingo. Violation of Bylaw 9F, Appendix C, Paragraph 7, regarding approved roadside postal units. It cited deviations in color, shape, apparently my classic shape wasn't classic enough, and material. It was metal, like 90% of mailboxes, but probably not the right kind of metal. Homeowner is hereby directed to rectify this non-compliance within 30 days by replacing the unit with an approved standard model. Attached was a single catalog page showcasing 17 different models of the exact same beige plastic mailbox. 17, the illusion of choice. Unbelievable! I slammed the letter down. She actually did it. Marjorie reported my mailbox for being blue and possibly existing. Sarah picked up the letter, reading it with resigned familiarity. Deep forest blue, honey, and that oak leaf plaque was a bit whimsical for Bylaw 9F. "It's art," I protested weakly, "and it's a mailbox? It holds junk mail and bills. Who cares what color it is as long as Cheryl can find it?" Cheryl was our mail carrier, a beacon of cheerful normalcy in our otherwise tightly wound neighborhood. "Marjorie cares, Alex," Sarah said tiredly. "You know she cares. Just get the beige box. It's not worth the fight." But it was. It was about the principle. It was about Marjorie's relentless quest to homogenize the entire world, one mailbox, one garden gnome, one slightly too jolly welcome mat at a time. I had to try. I caught Marjorie later, rigorously deadheading petunias that already looked suspiciously perfect. "Marjorie," I began, attempting my most reasonable tone. "About the mailbox, it's just a color. Does it really bother you that much?" She stood up, brushing imaginary dirt from her pristine gardening gloves. "Alex," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. "It's not about bother. It's about standards. It disrupts the visual harmony of our community. It's simply not appropriate." The finality in her voice was absolute. She turned back to her petunias, dismissing me like a slightly annoying gnat. That night, I sat staring at the HOA catalog page. The 17 identical beige boxes mocked me with their blandness. Sarah was right. It would be easier to just give in, let the beige wave wash over me. But as I crumpled the page, my fingers brushed against a stray Raspberry Pi Zero sitting on my desk, a tiny, cheap computer I'd bought for some forgotten project. And then it hit me. A spark. A beautiful, terrible, possibly actionable spark. The outside had to be compliant, beige, plastic, boring, utterly unremarkable. But the inside? The inside was a blank canvas. What if the mailbox wasn't just a dumb box? What if it had personality? What if it could interact? What if, when provoked, it could? Talk back. My fingers flew to my phone. "Ben, you busy? Feel like violating the spirit, if not the letter, of some HOA bylaws with me?" Ben Carter, my friend and fellow tech tinkerer, answered immediately. "Dude, always! What flavor of chaos are we cooking up today?" "Project Pandora's Box," I declared, a maniacal grin spreading across my face. "Marjorie Perkins just declared war on my mailbox. We're fighting back, with Python, proximity sensors, and passive-aggressive voice modulation." There was a pause. Then Ben started laughing. "A talking mailbox? Aimed at Marjorie? Oh, Alex, this is going to be your masterpiece." My garage transformed into a clandestine electronics lab. The centerpiece, one regulation-issue, soul-crushingly beige plastic mailbox, purchased under duress from the approved supplier. It sat on my workbench like a monument to defeated creativity, but not for long. Action/comedy. Montage. The build. Nights and weekends became a blur of wires, solder fumes, and quiet cursing. Alex and Ben, illuminated by the glow of laptops and workbench lamps, close-up on fingers carefully connecting tiny wires to the Raspberry Pi, drilling discrete holes in the bottom and back of the beige box for a weatherproof speaker and ultrasonic proximity sensors. Wiring up a small microphone near the mail slot. "Phase 2, Ben cackled, debating power sources, settling on a long-life battery pack supplemented by a small, easily hidden solar panel glued to the back, angled away from Marjorie's line of sight. The coding sessions were equally chaotic. We brainstormed lines, typed furiously, tested voice modulation software. "How about this?" Ben typed, hitting play. Mailbox voice, high-pitched, squeaky. "Neither snow nor rain nor gloom of night stays these couriers. But seriously, less junk mail, please." "No," I grimaced. "Too annoying, needs gravitas. Or maybe sarcasm?" "Okay, try this." Mailbox voice, deep, booming, slightly robotic. "Warning, unidentified life form detected. Please maintain regulatory distance from postal receptacle." "Better," I grinned. "Very Hal 9000 meets Neighborhood Watch." Testing was eventful. The mailbox randomly started reciting pi to 50 decimal places. The proximity sensor proved so sensitive it yelled, "Intruder alert!" every time a squirrel farted nearby. One evening, while testing voice commands, I muttered, "This is stupid," and the mailbox immediately replied, in its new gravelly monotone, "Query, is user intelligence quotient below acceptable parameters for interaction?" Ben collapsed laughing. Sarah walked in during a particularly intense session, where we were trying to make the mailbox convincingly complain about the weather. "Alex," she asked, peering at the tangle of wires, "is the toaster plotting against us again?" "No, honey," I said quickly, minimizing the code window. "Just upgrading the mailboxes, notification features, for efficiency. Mailbox voice. Atmospheric pressure dropping rapidly. Recommend securing patio furniture and small pets. Also, your begonias look thirsty. Sarah just stared at the beige box, then at me, then sighed the sigh of a woman who knew better than to ask further questions, and retreated. We refined the script, creating specific triggers. Cheryl mode, activated perhaps by the specific sound frequency of her mail truck engine. Ben got ambitious, or just a timed window around her usual delivery slot. Result: cheerful, helpful lines. Junk mail mode, triggered by volume weight sensor, inside, default response. Result: sarcastic rejections. Passerby mode, short proximity trigger. Result: random greetings, bad jokes. Marjorie mode, triggered by lingering proximity, more than 5 seconds within 3 feet. Result: polite but pointed observations and warnings. Never directly insulting, always deniable. Finally, it was ready. The ultimate Trojan horse. A beige box of bland compliance on the outside, a snarky, tech-infused agent of chaos on the inside. Operation Mailbox Swap commenced at 0400 hours. Under the cloak of suburban darkness, I performed the grim task of digging up the blue bomber. A moment of silence for its colorful defiance. Then, working quickly and quietly, I installed Pandora's box. Leveled it perfectly. Aligned it precisely with its beige brethren down the street. Packed the dirt. Brushed away any evidence. Snuck back inside just as the first hint of dawn touched the sky. And, predictably, just as Marjorie's bedroom curtains twitched. She peeked out, saw the regulation beige box standing sentinel, and I could almost feel her smug satisfaction radiating across the street. She thinks she's won, I thought, grinning in the shadows. She has no idea. Later that morning, I watched from the window, heart pounding with nervous anticipation. Cheryl's mail truck rumbled down the street, pulling up to my house. She hopped out, whistling, mailbag slung over her shoulder. Approached the new box. Opened the little door. Mailbox voice. Clear, cheerful, perfectly modulated. Good morning, Cheryl. Mailbox 7B reporting for duty. Looks like a package from Amazon today. Exciting. Cheryl physically jumped back, dropping a handful of letters. She stared at the mailbox. Looked left. Looked right. Looked at the mailbox again. Head tilted. Listened. Nothing. She cautiously picked up the letters, squinting at the beige box. Then, a slow, wide grin spread across her face. Well, I'll be, she chuckled, shaking her head as she stuffed the mail inside. Talkative little fella, aren't you? You have a good day too, Boxy. She hopped back in her truck, still chuckling. Mission accomplished. Stage 1, anyway. The real test came that afternoon. Marjorie embarked on her daily constitutional/neighborhood inspection tour. She marched down the sidewalk, posture rigid, eyes scanning for violations. As she drew level with my house, she paused, casting a critical eye over the new mailbox. A small, triumphant smirk played on her lips. She lingered, savoring the enforced conformity. 5 seconds passed. Proximity sensor threshold reached. Mailbox voice. Calmly, politely, but loud enough to be clearly heard. Observation. Unidentified individual exhibiting prolonged static proximity to a federal mail receptacle. Please proceed in an orderly fashion to maintain required clearance. Marjorie froze mid-smirk. Her head snapped up. She looked around wildly. Empty street. Empty lawns. She looked at the mailbox. Suspicion dawned in her eyes. She took a hesitant step closer. Mailbox voice. Warning. Minimum safe operating distance not maintained. Please step back from the designated postal zone. Marjorie gasped, stumbling back onto the sidewalk. She stared at the beige box, her face a mixture of confusion, outrage, and dawning paranoia. Who said that? Where did it come from? She scanned my house, her eyes narrowing, but I was safely hidden behind the curtains, trying desperately not to explode with laughter. She huffed, shook her head as if dismissing a bad dream, and marched off, visibly flustered. Phase 2 complete. The game was afoot. Pandora's box settled into its role beautifully. It became a quirky, unpredictable part of the streetscape. It learned Cheryl's schedule, greeting her by name and occasionally offering weather updates. Looks like rain around 3 p.m., Cheryl. Might want that umbrella? It developed a deep-seated hatred for pizza flyers, loudly proclaiming, "My occupant maintains a strict keto lifestyle. Begone, vile carbohydrates." Whenever one was inserted, it told groan-worthy knock-knock jokes to the kids walking home from school. Knock-knock. Who's there? Interrupting cow. Interrupting cow. What? Moo! And for Marjorie? Oh, for Marjorie, it became a subtle, persistent, electronic gadfly. Query: is the application of chemical pesticides within 10 feet of a public thoroughfare compliant with local ordinances? As she sprayed her roses. Observation: decibel level of canine vocalizations originating from adjacent property exceeds recommended residential limits. When her yappy poodle started barking. Reminder: regularly rotating garden gnomes promotes even fading and prevents localized aesthetic stagnation. It never accused. It never insulted directly. It just observed, commented, queried, always politely, always deniably. Marjorie, predictably, went from confused to obsessed. We'd see her lurking near the mailbox at odd hours. We saw her talking to it, arguing with it, pleading with it. "Who are you?" she'd hiss at the beige plastic. Mailbox voice. "I am Mailbox Unit 7B. My purpose is postal." "Stop commenting on my fertilizer schedule." Mailbox voice. "Optimal nitrogen-phosphorus balance is crucial for rhododendron health. Just an observation." She tried recording it. I'd see her hiding behind her minivan, phone pointed stealthily. But Ben and I had anticipated that. We'd added a simple routine. Detect active Bluetooth/Wi-Fi scanning nearby, like a phone trying to pair or record, and revert to silent mode, or just say boring things. All Marjorie got was recordings of silence, or the mailbox blandly stating, "Mail compartment currently empty." Her complaints to the HOA became legendary. Abernathy started avoiding my calls. Apparently, Marjorie was convinced the mailbox was possessed, broadcasting government secrets, or possibly judging her very soul. Finally, Abernathy had no choice but to investigate personally. He arrived one Tuesday morning, looking like he'd rather be undergoing a root canal. Marjorie hovered nearby, vibrating with anticipation, ready for her vindication. "Alex," Abernathy began, wringing his hands, "Marjorie has filed, well, numerous, and quite detailed, complaints about your mailbox, talking, harassing her, questioning her, gardening techniques." "My mailbox?" I feigned wide-eyed innocence. "Talking, Abernathy, it's a standard beige plastic model, HOA approved. Maybe Marjorie's hearing things?" "It talks," Marjorie shrieked. "It insulted my petunias." Abernathy approached the mailbox hesitantly, like it might bite. Hello?" he warbled. "Mailbox, are you operational?" Mailbox voice. Pleasant, slightly formal. "Good morning, President Abernathy. Mailbox Unit 7B online and ready to receive authorized U.S. Postal Service deliveries. All external components conform to Regulation 9F, Appendix C. Internal diagnostics nominal. Have a productive day." Abernathy jumped a foot. "Good heavens, it does talk, but—" He tapped it, poked it, opened and closed the little door. "It looks completely normal. Where is the voice coming from?" The weatherproof transducer speaker Ben sourced was very well hidden. "Make it insult me," Marjorie demanded, pushing forward. "Go on. Say something about my hydrangeas." Abernathy cleared his throat. Mailbox. Mrs. Perkins feels you have been unduly critical?" Mailbox voice. "Query unclear. My function is postal reception and standard system notifications. User emotional states are outside my operational parameters. Perhaps the individual requires technical assistance with their hearing aid." Marjorie gasped. Abernathy looked utterly bewildered. He couldn't see anything wrong. He couldn't prove anything malicious. He mumbled something about stray radio signals and possible wiring faults, and made a hasty retreat, leaving Marjorie sputtering in his wake. But Marjorie Perkins wasn't one to give up. If the HOA wouldn't act, she'd get the proof herself. That weekend, she launched Operation Mailbox Stakeout. I saw her lurking behind the perfectly sculpted cones of her juniper bushes, binoculars raised, a digital recorder clutched in her hand. She was there for hours, swatting mosquitoes, waiting. The climax came Monday morning. Cheryl arrived, right on schedule. Mailbox voice. "Morning, Cheryl. Looks like that package you were waiting for is here today. Heavy one, be careful." Cheryl laughed. "Thanks, Boxy. You look out for me." She loaded the mail, waved, and drove off. This was Marjorie's moment. She burst from the bushes, waving her recorder triumphantly. "Aha! I got it! You heard it! It talks!" She practically shoved the recorder in Cheryl's face as the mail truck pulled away. Cheryl just looked confused. "Heard what, Marjorie? Boxy saying hi?" "Yeah, he does that. Kinda cute." "Cute?" Marjorie shrieked. "It harasses me. It mocks my gardening. It's evil." Just then, I coincidentally stepped outside to retrieve my imaginary newspaper from the porch. Marjorie spun towards me, finger pointing accusingly. You did this, Alex Parker. You programmed this demon box to torment me." The stage was set. Neighbors were peeking out windows. Abernathy, drawn by the commotion, was hovering nervously on the edge of his lawn. Time for the coup de grace. I subtly tapped the custom app Ben and I had built on my phone, hidden in my pocket. Mailbox voice. Its tone shifts subtly, sounding almost hurt, confused. "Torment, calculation error. My core programming prioritizes accurate timekeeping, weather reporting, and positive communication with authorized postal personnel like the esteemed Cheryl. Accusations of mockery or demonic possession are illogical and, frankly, quite hurtful. Perhaps recalibration is required? Or perhaps—" Its voice dropped to a near whisper, audible only to those nearby. "External factors like elevated stress or an overabundance of hedge-trimming fumes are affecting auditory perception." Silence. Utter, stunned silence. Cheryl snorted, trying to cover a laugh. Abernathy's jaw dropped. Even the yappy poodle next door seemed momentarily quiet. Marjorie stared at the mailbox, then at me, then at the gathering neighbors. Her face crumpled. The accusation, combined with the mailbox's calm, almost pitying denial, was too much. She let out a strangled cry, threw her recorder onto her own lawn, and stormed back into her house, slamming the door with enough force to rattle windows. Checkmate, by Mailbox. After the great Mailbox stakeout incident, things changed. Marjorie's complaints ceased. The HOA quietly dropped the investigation. Abernathy practically ran the other way if he saw me. Marjorie became even more reclusive. Her hedges, ironically, started looking a little ragged. Rumor had it she'd listed her house with an out-of-state realtor. And Boxy? Boxy became a legend. Kids left drawings for it. Cheryl chatted with it daily. Some neighbors thought it was hilarious. Others gave it a wide berth. Life returned to its normal, slightly less beige rhythm. I kept tinkering, of course. Couldn't help myself. Ben, I said over video chat one evening, laptop open, code scrolling. Thinking of adding seasonal greetings? Maybe teach it jingle bells? Nice, Ben grinned. But can you make it harmonize? Sarah walked in holding a takeout menu that had just arrived. Alex, she said, raising an eyebrow, please tell me you did not just program the mailbox to offer Cheryl unsolicited opinions on local pizza toppings. I gave her my most innocent look. From outside, faint but clear, came the sound of Boxy's voice. Query: does pineapple truly belong on pizza? Community poll suggests strongly negative response. Recommend pepperoni. Sarah just sighed, shook her head, and walked away. I looked thoughtfully at the pizza menu. You know, Ben, I mused, teaching it to actually order the pizza. Now that's a phase 2 worth exploring. The possibilities, like the mail, were endless.